All right. So if everybody can see my screen, um, for our past recover project, um, they have these additional tests that they assign to each participant. And then when those tests get performed, they have an investigator review them and add any notes or comments. And then when those reviews have been made, then notifications go out. But they wanted a notification to let the investigators know that they had outstanding reviews. And so I had created a notification for each of the reviewers here, and let me go to the review window here. So there's 8 reviewers starting here. There's 8 reviewers, and then these are separate notifications. The first notifications, every time a record is saved for them that says that they need to review it, a notification goes out to them saying that there's a record. But this is more of just a reminder to let them know, hey, you've got outstanding records. And we had this set up so that it goes out every week. So the way I did it initially was I just created an instrument because this project has events, and I just created an event that just says like a reminder, and I created an instrument that's off to the side that nobody's going to enter data on, and then I just had a checkbox that just said send out notification. And once that got sent out, then I have REDCap send out the notification every week, so I don't have to do anything. It's just set it and forget it. And we've been doing that for about a month now, and everything's working fine. But recently this week, the coordinator for the project emailed me and asked if we could only send out the notification if that investigator has pending reviews. So I had to try to think about how to capture that and how to.
Danny,
yep.
I'm sorry. Before you go on, can you just show how the it's being triggered by the event that's not like attached to anything else or whatever?
Oh, what do you mean?
To trigger the review.
Oh, the initial trigger?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so everybody has a complete picture of how that's working.
Yeah.
Also, since we have the time.
Yep. Yeah, so there's a few instruments that they have here. So there's a physical assessment. This one's retired. Let me see. Basically the same thing. So they just have we have let me go to the, I can't show you the actual records because there's live data, but I'll show you the designer. So in the additional tests that we have, there's let's see. There we go. So the way we have it set up is that they check whether it needs to be reviewed, and so they want to notify the investigator, and then they select the investigator from a drop down, which is here, and then we have a calc text that automatically updates their email, and that's what we use to send out the notification. So in here, so I can just show you here for the samples. This is a different field, but it's the clinical, they're checking any record that has that email isn't blank. And then we're using that email field in the email to send out to them. So anytime a record is saved, there's a couple of instruments where an investigator has to review, but this one is mostly for the additional tests here. So whenever the investigator gets that email, they click on the link, they get sent to this record. And actually I can show you a dummy record. Um, so here they would have a test. And then the test was performed, and then we're gonna notify the investigator, and we would just put one of these in here, and this automatically. So once if I was the coordinator, I would do this, and I would save it, and then the investigator would come to this record, and they would review it. There's certain fields for this test that they fill out, and then when they're done, they notify the coordinator that it's been reviewed, and they sign it and everything like that. And then, but records are being sent out, records are being created, sometimes faster than they can review. And so they're getting emails every time. But the coordinator wanted a way for them to just check if they had records that they need to go through. And so this is what the report looks like. And so this would be for Lillian Hanson, and I de-identified it here. So she would basically she has 3 that she has to do. And so then she could just click on the record ID. And so the notification that gets sent out has a link to this report. So she can just click on the link and go to her report, or it's down here in the bookmarks over here for the reports. If they, they don't have that email, or if they deleted it or something, or if they ever just need to go back and, they can do it here as well. So, so the coordinator wanted to send out, instead of having it send out to them every week, and they click on it and then it turns out they don't have any, she wanted me to figure out a way to only send out the notification if there were any records. And so this was a little more, I thought it was going to be a bit more complicated, because the way this instrument is set up for the additional tests, it's a repeating instance. And so I was thinking I was going to have to find a way to go through all of the records and all of the instances, and then figure out how to get instances and records by coordinator. I thought it was going to be this big problem. And so I had actually kind of created some sort of, it was like stepwise, where originally in the and I had deleted it, I should have kept it for the demo, but originally in the additional tests at the bottom, I had created, so there's 8 investigators. So I created a field for each one of them. And I said, if the coordinator, so I said, if this investigator, so like for Lillian, they would select Lillian. So I was like, I checked if this value was selected, I used the calc text to say, put a 1 in this field. And then if it wasn't, then put a 0. And so I created 8 fields for each one for each of the investigators. And basically, if this one was for Lillian, then that record at the bottom, the field for Lillian would have a 1, and then the field for the other ones would all be 0. And then what I did was I updated, I did a data quality check, and I updated all the calculations. And then I had a separate, I created a separate instrument to track all those. And I just had an instrument called outstanding reviews. And originally I had a field here that would say, give me like the sum of all of those records. So it would go through all of the records, and however many that had Lillian marked as 1, it would count all those up. And then if it didn't, oh, and I also had it check that it wasn't just Lillian was marked there. It was Lillian was marked there, but whether it was reviewed or not was marked as no. So it basically captured those values. So it would only say that it was outstanding if she was marked there, but it was marked as no. So I had that working, And that was my initial attempt, and that was fine. But then I realized that there's actually a better way to do it, and that's kind of the bulk of this video is using these smart variables. So I didn't know this, but I was kind of on the right track when I first started, because I used these aggregate fields here. And so I've never really messed with these. And so the one that I used was the count here. So anything that was marked as a 1, it would count it. And I would just have it in this field, and then I would use that for the parameters for the report. And I realized as I was scrolling through here that if we go further down, that you can actually use these parameters, these aggregate functions, on your own reports. So there's one here that is, so you just instead of putting in just the field that you want to capture a value for, the aggregate that you want, you would also put in the report ID. And so then I realized that I don't have to create all these fields. I don't have to create a counter field in the additional tests to like mark it as 1 or 0. I didn't have to create a field in this outstanding reviews to capture all these. This is actually the second iteration of this, because after I got rid of the ones in the additional test, I realized that I could just capture that value here. And this is what it looks like for all these individual investigators. So you can see here that Lillian has 3, Franz has 21, David has 10, and the rest are 0 except for Sam. So I was on the right track. And this is how I originally had it, because it would just, if this value was greater than 0, it would send out the report or send out the email. If it was 0, then it wouldn't. So I was already on the right track. But then what I realized was, and this is what that field looks like, the calculated field. So I'm using a calc text just to grab that value, and I'm asking it to give me the count. And if we look here, I closed it. If we look here, the cool thing about using this aggregate function is you can grab any value in the report. So here I'm just using record ID. So I'm saying, give me a count of the record ID for this report specifically. And I realized that I didn't have to create a field here and then reference it in my report. I could actually just go to my report and put it in directly. So if we go down here to Lillian's, what I'm doing is I'm grabbing that smart variable, and then I'm just saying if that value is greater than 0. So I don't even need these fields anymore. I can just do it directly in the alert and notification. And so if her record is, so she has 3, if she still has 3 by next Tuesday, when this notification gets sent out, it'll automatically send her the notification. So these smart variables are really nice, especially when you combine them with the other fields. If you're using a report, let's see where they. And there's quite a few of these. I've never really messed with any of these because I don't do a lot of data crunching, and aggregates and stuff. But this would be really neat. And then the cool thing is, if you ever have an instrument that you want to put these on, that value would be the same throughout all the instruments. So if you ever needed to just keep a running tally of something, or you want to see how many people you've enrolled or something like that, you could have these count fields, or like they used an example here for mean, for age, and max and median. So if anytime you're enrolling a patient, you want to see what how many patients you have enrolled, and then what their average age is, and then what their minimum and maximum age is, you could see that kind of as like a dashboard at the top of your instrument. Or just, you could even create your own instrument off to the side that just houses all this kind of aggregate data that if you just want to look at statistics of your project. And So let me show you where, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the reports, but let me show you where to find that ID. Because every time you create a report in REDCap, it gets a unique ID throughout all of REDCap, not just your project. So these are the values that you want to use if you use these smart variables for the report. It's this one here, and it's just the right hand column in whenever you look in your report dashboard. So this was kind of nice because I just created 8 of these, you know, and I checked so we can look at the report here. And I'm just saying, you know, if the person is, you know, if they've selected her and whether it was reviewed or not. So I'm saying, give me everything that's not yes. And then, so I'm able to do the querying here, and then I'm able to grab the results using the smart variable and put them somewhere else. So I thought that was really cool. It actually made this a lot easier to build that functionality and to send out the reports only if they had them than I was thinking. Like if originally, whenever I first thought about this, it was going to be way more complicated. So it actually turned out to be really easy, and I was able to refactor it a couple of times, which is nice because I was worried that with my original solution, it was going to be complicated because if, for example, they bring on another investigator, like I have to remember all the things that I built to add them. Like I have to create another notification. I have to go in and create another check to grab all those, you know, ones and zeros. And I have to grab another field that totals them all up. And I remember it all now because I only did it this week. But if I had to do this 6 months from now, I would have to really go back and look at my notes and figure out exactly what I did for everything. And so, or, you know, same thing if they removed an investigator, you know, I would have to do all this stuff, although removing them would be easy because I could just disable their notification. But this makes it so much easier now because I can just create a report. I can just copy one of the notifications that I'm already using and just change the value to the new report that I created, and it'll automatically grab that person's information. So I thought it was pretty cool. Does anybody have any
I agree. Yeah, I have a question. So I was trying to kind of look at this on my own, but it's slow loading a bit. And all right, so I want to go back and just talk about the additional tests. You have if you look at the longitudinal design, you've created an event called additional tests, I think. Let me just see. Give me a second here.
Yeah, like here in the so here for the additional tests.
Yes, so you tier 2, 3 additional tests, and then you have for that you have an instrument called additional tests, which you were demoing, which is associated to that event. So the coordinator is going to go into that, knows to go into that to indicate additional tests need to be completed. Is that correct?
It's whenever it's when the test, so the coordinator will enter the test in there, and then when they save it, because there's some tests that need a review and some that don't. So if it does need a review, the coordinator would select who that's going to get assigned to, and then say that it needs a review. And then when they save it, the original notification will go to that investigator and say, hey, there's a new record that needs your review. Here, click on this link to take you to this record. And then when they come into that record, they would go down to the investigator review section, and then they would enter their information. There's also a notification that when the investigator finishes their review, they say notify coordinator, and they say yes, and then it automatically goes back. An email goes back to the coordinator that says, "Hey, the reviewer has reviewed it." But then separately, as these reviews keep happening, the reviewers could get behind, or they could forget, because you're getting them all in your email. You're not going to keep track of how many you got or which one you clicked on or which one you didn't. So this other notification just says, hey, by the way, you have some outstanding reviews. Click on this report to see all your records that you need to review. And then they would see this report that shows them which ones they need to review.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I just wanted to make sure that, well, I just wanted to kind of make sure everybody understood. I mean, so that instrument is that instrument of additional tests is a repeating instrument, which allows the coordinator to reuse it over and over and over again.
Yeah, because there's like 38 different tests in this instrument. So let me go back to just add a dummy record here. So there's like 38 different tests, and instead of having, clicked on the wrong one. Instead of having an instrument for each test, because this was the other problem that we had to solve, is if I created an instrument for each test, I would have to create a notification for each test, because every time a test got put in, it would have to go to an investigator. And so I'd have like 38 different instruments, and I'd have to have 38 different notifications. But the other thing too is these people may have these tests assigned to them multiple times throughout the recover study. So whenever they go in for follow-up 1, they could have certain tests. If they don't get it done by follow-up 1, they may, have to get it up for follow-up 2. And so here what they do is they select the tests. These are all the tests. And then some of them have data that needs to be entered. So you can see here, this one says no investigator review needed. So the person just fills out the information for the test, just saying that, these are just the things that they need to know. And then there's no investigator review needed. But like for the CPET, and then they also have, these are so if this was, assigned in follow-up 1 or follow-up 2, they would put in this, because the person could have it for follow-up 1, and then they may need to do it again for follow-up 3 or something like that. And then once a test is performed, they also have this option of uploading documents. And so this is a group of fields that they would say that this is a source document. And then if they want to add another one, they just say yes, and it just gives another batch of fields for them to do it. And they can do this up to 5 times. So they can upload 5 documents. And then whenever they select to notify the investigator, some tests have fields that the investigator needs to enter data on. Like, for example, here, they're going to be entering all of this information about the CPET, like measures and things like that. Some of them just need for the investigator to just maybe review the record. Like some of them don't have data entry, they just have documents, and they just need the investigator to review the documents and then just sign off that those documents were reviewed. So this has a bunch of data here, and then they would type in this message to the participant, which goes to another notification. So when this gets saved, this message actually gets put in an email and sent to the participant. So if there's anything that the investigator is concerned about or needs to follow up with, the participant needs to follow up with their doctor or something like that, or hey, these test results were kind of weird, like go check something out. Like this can get sent directly to the participant and let them know, like, hey, something happened during this test. And then once they're done, they would notify the coordinator, and then they would sign it. And then that triggers the other notification to go to the coordinator. So this allows them to have multiple instances for the additional test, and for multiple tests for multiple visits, but because it's all in one long instrument. And you can see here, if we go to the designer, for this additional test, there's like 582 fields on it. And so every time I build a test, there's a section for each test that the branching logic either shows or hides, depending on what test you select. But there's only one group of source document fields. So there's more complicated branching logic that says if it's this test or this test or this test, show this. If it's, the ones that are investigator reviews, I have to go through each of the tests that are investigator reviews and say, if it's these tests, then show this or not. But by having it all on one instrument, then everything gets filtered through one mechanism for notification. And it's very easy to kind of maintain that workflow than having everything split out separately. And especially for adding tests.
And it's one test per instrument. So all the data, so if they have two tests, they fill out two instruments, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then what also makes this one, the additional tests on this one more interesting too, is there's a REDCap central database for this project, which is hosted by Harvard, and they're getting data from all over the country and putting it in theirs. And they're the ones who are saying like, hey, this person needs, they're getting flagged. They're flagging these participants for these tests and saying, hey, this person needs to do a CPET or a vision test or whatever. So they're entering it in their database. And what I have to do is I have to grab their data, map it to our data, because they have all their tests are like one long instrument. And instead of having it broken up by instance, it's basically like an Excel spreadsheet that goes, horizontally. So I have to take that horizontal data and convert it to like vertical data where each row is a test, and I have to map it to hours, and I have to upload these tests from REDCap Central into our REDCap so that the coordinators here know which test the participant needs to do whenever they come in for their visit. So I run this this kind of data conversion mapping import every Friday for the group. And that's, I basically export all the data from REDCap Central. I have an Access database that I use that I wrote scripts for. I grab data from here because I also have to map our record IDs to their record IDs because they're not the same. They're using the study ID as their identifier, whereas we're just using the REDCap ID. So I have to make that link, and then I have to map the data and transform it to our data here. And then I have to import it into our system. And I've gotten that down it used to take me a couple of hours every week, and now it takes me maybe 10 minutes. And most of that is just because there's 3 clinic sites at Harvard, and I have to basically download 3 separate Excel spreadsheets and copy and paste them into one. So I have one spreadsheet with all the records, and that's usually what takes the longest time. And then importing it, I just click on my macro in Microsoft Access, and it runs it maybe in like 30 seconds. And then it spits out the CSV file, and I just then import it into REDCap.
Right. Nice. Okay, 2 more questions.
Mm-hmm.
One, so when the reviewer or whatever gets that report, so let's say I think the first one was ID 191, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they know when they click on the record which tests need reviewed? In other words, let's say you see 42 there. What if there was 60? Are they supposed to look down below for the repeating instrument component for additional tests to see is there a completed or not completed, or
no, because this link, if you click on this record ID right here, it takes you to this exact instance. So they have
I see.
Yeah,
I
they
see
have
what
a
you're saying.
review for this specific test, this specific instance, and this clicking on this 192 link over here for the record actually takes them to that specific instance. Which is really nice.
Yeah, very, very nice. So if there was more than one test for them to review, there would be 2 rows in this report, correct?
Yeah, it would be like, if this instead of was 190, 1655, if this was 192 again
Yeah.
for a PFT and an echo, yeah, it would show all of these. So it's every instance that person needs to review, which
Oh,
is
that's
each individual test.
sweet. Well,
Yeah.
and then finally, in the instrument itself, you said there's docs that could be added, right? Are they
Right.
just uploaded as links?
Yeah, they're just uploaded as links and saved.
Is there any, do you by any chance set it up so those documents are automatically viewable within the instrument itself, or do the investigators click on the link to view it, or how does that work?
I think it's just set up as the link for now. Because a lot of these, I don't think they're looking at them locally. They're yeah, so here it's just a link for I don't have anything set up to where it's opening for them.
Right, so are they different kinds of, is it just PDFs or just anything? It could be a CSV file or a Word document.
And so they're just going to type what the document is up here. If it's like if they're getting a printout from if they did a PET scan or a chest CT or something, and they're getting the documents from the hospital, they're going to type in what it is here and they're going to upload it. And then they're going to add saying that it's being added as a new site original, and then they're going to certify that is true. They're going to put their name in and the date, and then sign it. So there's some of these tests that only have source document uploads. There's some that only have direct data entry, and then there's some that have both. So you could either have either or. So it just depends on what the person is getting at the time. If they don't have the direct data entry and they just have the documents, they just put those in. If they just have if they're doing it in the clinic at the time and they're entering those values, like for the vision test or something, as they're running through the test at the same time, they're entering the data. So that's a direct data entry for that test. So there's multiple options that they have when they're, depending on what the test is. So I had to go through and make sure that branching logic is set for that as well.
I have a question.
Sure.
Actually, it's two comments on at the bottom of the screen that's on the screen now. You have certification is misspelled.
Oh.
And then there's a question mark in front of once in the red. My signature below signifies. I don't know if you want that question mark.
Do you see it after doc in the middle of go down? My signature.
There,
right here.
right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's not supposed to be there.
Okay. And then I had one other question at the very beginning. I think you said that you made a separate instrument where nobody would do any data entry to. It was just for you to manage this. Is that list of investigators and the numbers that now you've overridden? You don't need that anymore?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
this here, because originally it was just a checkbox.
Right. Okay.
And then originally it was these values here, which I can take out now. And it's in a I just put it on record 1 because that record will probably never be deleted. And I just, it's off to the side. Like there's so many events in this
Yeah.
in this
I feel
project.
like, I'm sorry, I feel like that even though that's not what you're using to do what you need to do, it certainly is a nice quick check for the coordinators to say, okay, who is and isn't on top of their stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So I see, you can see here all these are all the events that they have. And then we have a lot of like old consents that are pushed over here. And so this is just on the end, it's just called trigger. And if I really wanted to, I could go through the user rights and make it to where nobody else could see this but me. But it's, you know, it's only those fields. It's only these fields here. So there's no data entry to it. And it's not gonna, you know what I mean? Like if it was something that I thought somebody could mess up, then I would probably do more due diligence and make sure that nobody could see it. And it's kind of
Exactly.
behind the scenes. Or what I would do is also what I had these set to before is that I just had them all hidden. So if you opened it, it just looked like an empty instrument. Nobody could see anything. So you couldn't do anything to it.